onto our paddle. So, how are you guys? Good?
Awesome.
Awesome. I'm going to start by one I know that a lot of people ask us when we meet with the investor community and even in our social circles. And it's one that really frustrates me and us, given that we know the facts. And that is, and you know what, we're probably as guilty as the people that ask us this question. And the question is, or the comparison is, and I don't even want to use the name of these companies, but sorry, I have to for effect, apologies. You know, Careem is the Uber of the Middle East, Anghami is the Spotify of the Middle East, and Property Finder is the Zillow, Zoopla, Rightmove, depending on where you live and which country. We've got all the comps of the Middle East. And while that is true in business nature and business model, it is, and I know for a fact, extremely untrue. And I would like you gentlemen, please, to debunk the myth in one go to this large audience of, I don't know, 200, 250 people. Please, whoever wants to go first, it's just, I need to get this out of my system.
Okay, so thanks, Dany. Every time I hear that phrase, X of the Middle East, it bothers you, especially since we compete with them in the region as well. But the two things that are interesting, one is, sometimes people say you need to get an idea to start something or to leave your jobs and do something. In our case, it was actually the opposite. There was moments in our lives where we said, let's do something meaningful and something big, and then let's find what that thing could be that could be meaningful and big. And since the best ideas come from your personal experiences, and we were consultants in the region, based in Dubai, but traveling the region, and we would spend a lot of time traveling to Saudi. You go to Saudi, you land in Riyadh, someone's supposed to come and pick you up. 8 out of 10 times the car shows up, 2 out of 10 times the car doesn't show up. And when it shows up, you need to go to location XYZ. They don't know how to get there. You don't know how to get there because you don't live in Riyadh. He's calling someone, you're calling someone, trying to figure out how to navigate. At the end of the ride, if you have a contract with this company, then you sign a piece of paper and are done with it. If you don't have a contract, then you need to figure out the local currency that you need to pay this person with, and off you go. So it was fairly painful and unreliable experience traveling the region as a business traveler. And when we were looking for an opportunity that had to be both big and had to be meaningful, we realized that arranging corporate travel in the region could be quite interesting. And we did our market sizing as true consultants and realized that this could be a multi-billion-dollar opportunity, making it easy for all the companies that have staff based in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Bahrain, and traveling the region to make it happen. So the first version of Careem, and that was the case for almost the first year of Careem, wasn't an app, wasn't an on-demand service. It was a web-based interface. You can go and say, I need the car from point A to point B, and I need the car at this time in the future. It was purely business-focused, corporate-focused. We went to all the consulting companies, accounting firms, law firms, and basically said, we'll make it very, very easy to book travel for your staff. And that's really all we did for the first year of Careem. And then as people around the world started experiencing some of the on-demand startups, they, even before we knew what we were doing, started calling us that of the Middle East. And we realized that if you want to go after the consumer space, which is an interesting space, the model could be app-based and on-demand. So we definitely got inspired towards the end of it, but the vision was completely different. The idea was very different. It was based on our own personal pain points as consultants, and the focus was businesses, the focus was reliability, the focus was customer service.
Thank you.
Yeah, so they call us Spotify of the Middle East. At the time, they knew what is Spotify. Now Spotify is just launched in the Middle East. So again,
what year was this at inception?
So we started thinking about it in 2010. 2010, we launched at the end of 2011. The idea started simple. Eddie, my co-founder, wanted to be able to listen to music while skiing. It was like a pain. I mean, we couldn't find music. We had to actually go figure out where to download music from. There was no iTunes in the region. And he was telling me, how do I have to update my iPod? The music is old.
Skiing in Beirut, I'm assuming, not Mall of the Emirates.
No, skiing in Beirut, exactly.
Just make sure it's Beirut,
not literally in
Beirut-based company.
in the mountains in Lebanon. So basically, he was telling me about it, and I told him, yeah, I mean, technically we could do that. Why can't we do it? At the time, we're talking about web. We're not even talking about apps. I'm talking 2010 apps. I mean, iPhone 3 was just launched. Apps weren't there. So we started thinking about it. We started thinking about how did we start consuming music. We used to go to a DJ shop, tell him, I need a mixtape. And, ask a certain DJ, I want that mixtape from you, not the other one, because I like your style of music, because I want to do it for me. And that's how that started. I told Eddie, we're going to do that. We're going to do it in social, whereby people would be playing certain type of music, and you would go in a chat room where everybody likes, let's say, progressive rock or likes tarab music or whatever, and people would listen together and they'd give feedback and recommend music, and that way we would actually get new taste of music.
That's what you launched initially?
No, that was the pitch. That was the pitch that we started working on. Once we started working on, we realized that we needed to have proper, basics before doing what we wanted to do, because we realized we needed data. We needed data to be able to create all the music, all those chat rooms. We need to get people. We could not get, what comes chicken and egg before, and how do we actually group the music together? Because music is not tagged. Music doesn't work that, we get it in a way that is properly recommended. You have to create algorithms to do that. We realized we needed to do something basic first, and we started doing something that is simple. It's a search box that you can search for anything, and it comes up. And at that time, when we started doing it, the first iteration, we never knew about an app called Spotify, because they had launched 2-3 years ago before in Sweden. They were still in Europe, and internet wasn't the same thing. But obviously, when we shifted from the idea that we couldn't do to something that we were totally satisfied of, we realized that there was an app like Spotify. We looked at it, but the idea that we launched for Anghami was social music. And thankfully, that idea, 6 years later, will see the light. We're still working on that idea of Anghami, that the social music platform that we wanted it to be. But machine learning requires billions of data points before we could do our vision. And thankfully, now we're close to doing that, 6 years later.
Awesome. So corporate ground transportation solutions, you and Magnus trying to solve a pain point that you personally experienced, and it seems as though your peers were experiencing, which you described. Social, web-based, chat room, music collaboration.
For skiing.
Yeah. For skiing, and you had not heard of Spotify or Deezer or any of these other businesses.
Not in 2010, obviously.
Yeah. No, I'm saying at the inception. Cool.
Yeah.
Now, Mika, this is my favorite story. Can you dial back and just tell us what brought you to Dubai, and then how you ended up doing what you're doing with Property Finder?
Yeah. Before I do that, I just want to say, Spotify and Uber is not a bad word, right? It's not horrible to be compared to.
Yeah. I guess it's the copycat concept. It's the fact that someone just woke up and said, "I'm going to do the same thing," and is not mission driven, and is just trying to build a business that.
The solution, the problems that we are solving here in the Middle East are always different than what exists elsewhere, right?
I think that's where the pain comes in, right?
Yeah.
Because when someone uses that word copycat, it feels like you're not innovating at all.
Totally.
Whereas there's so much local innovation that is happening on the ground, learning what customers want, what captains want, and constant iteration. And in many cases, we actually realize that the Ubers and the Spotifys are actually copying our local innovation, and we are the leaders in the local markets, right? But that whole labeling doesn't discounts that significantly.
But from a pitch perspective, when you're talking to an investor, it does come in handy, right? Rather than going through and explaining the entire business model, it is a shortcut of explaining, and investors like to know that it is a business model that has been proven elsewhere. You're not trying to reinvent the world in the Middle East. You're just taking something that is working elsewhere, but we are doing it differently in our part of the world. No?
Exactly. As long as it doesn't discount what you do for your community, because there's a lot of differences, then we're just fine with it.
I think when I say it, and by the way, I'm going to put my hand up, I'm guilty of using that analogy, actually less so now, so I'll say it's the ride-hailing champion of the Middle East property portal. The thing is, people probably don't understand, your layman won't understand what a property portal is. So one has to then use that comparable. But I think the way I do it now is I say the Zoopla, well, we have a very close friend in common, right, Alex? So I'm the founder of Zoopla as a good friend. And so I'm delighted to make that comparison. However, what I do finish the sentence with is making sure that the people understand that this is not the genesis of why these entrepreneurs woke up one day to start, solving for a massive problem. Okay, you go ahead, because I just love your story.
So, when I first visited in 2004, Dubai was being built, Palm Island was being built, Burj Khalifa, the marina, and everybody was focusing on these mega developments. And when I asked the question, where do you go when you're looking to rent an apartment, the simple rental apartment? Everybody pointed to Gulf News, which was the newspaper of the time.
And you have Khalid Al-Tayer in the room, by the way.
That has a
he's cool. Go for it.
That has a big supplement in it. And the way it was done is that a broker would buy an entire page, and in that page he would put properties from the marina, from the Palm. So if you wanted a one-bedroom in Dubai Marina, you'd have to flick through 150 pages of that supplement. You end up with blue fingerprints, and it was a bit of a hideous process. And so we decided to put a little bit of order in that, and first launched a print publication, because internet had a penetration of like 40%, so we couldn't really generate leads for real estate brokers just based on a website in 2004. Most people were looking for something to grab when they were looking for property. They weren't thinking, oh, let me pull out my phone. So we started with a publication, and then once we got the content and the attention from the brokers, and that we couldn't succeed in beating the supplement of Gulf News because it was the holy grail, and we decided to pivot and to move to online.
Can I be a little bit more specific, and please shut me up if I'm going to go off-road here.
I'm being politically correct.
Don't be politically correct. He's fine with it. It's fine. It is what it is. So these large print classifieds, I was a client, right, in my prior businesses. I needed to recruit, and so I would put an ad in the Khalij Times or the Gulf News, and those were the two monopolies at the time, or oligopolies, duopolies, whatever they call them, at least in the UAE. And you would get a significant discount, 50%, and in some cases actually much more than 50%, to be exclusive. The English daily, you can only put in whatever it was, in the Gulf News. Up comes Michael, who tries to compete in the print space, and then is then told by his customers, wow, we can't use you anymore because we're actually in violation of this exclusivity clause, and we're being told by the monsters, the two I mentioned earlier, that if we don't cease to advertise in your print classifieds, then they'll charge us the back tax of the discount for this year and last year, something of that sort, which is essentially what happened to Michael. And then he thought that contract doesn't extend, the exclusivity doesn't extend to digital.
So I'm thankful, actually, for that exclusivity, because without that exclusivity, without the client saying, look, I can't advertise with you because I'm exclusive with Gulf News, and they're giving me 93% discount, and there's no way I can afford the real rate card, I'm thinking, okay, there's no way I'm going to beat that, big mammoth head-to-head. I have to come up with another alternative, and that's when we moved to online and pivoted to online. So.
And just to put things in perspective, so 2010, 2012, July, it's my birthday almost, July 21st, 22nd.
23rd.
23rd.
First of Ramadan.
First of Ramadan in that year.
Yes.
And 2007, inception, you started the print business?
2005.
2005.
Yeah.
So again, debunking the myth that success comes very quickly, it doesn't. That's 13 years ago. And the digital pivot was 08, 09, around the crisis time.
Yeah, 2007 is when we started really investing in the online, and then the transition from the major advertising dollar going to the print, move to online. That was after the financial crisis, when real estate agents needed a more cost-effective medium than print to generate leads, and we had a solution for them then.
And so in my prior experience, when I was in the job site space, crises were actually a great thing for us because customers flocked to the most efficient solution, which is clearly digital. Right now, even in those days, it was pretty obvious. So you experienced the same thing. I remember when we were looking at your numbers in those, you could see when the crises were, right? You'd have this massive uptake and spike in revenues and customer acquisition because people would think, I can't afford to be luxurious and just be local through print. I need to be lower cost, faster, and global in my exposure.
Actually, tough market conditions are great for internet businesses because internet businesses are more efficient. They're cheaper, and you can track better your ROI or whatever it is that you're using. So when we go through difficult times, even now, like it's known to be a difficult time in the UAE from a property market perspective. Well, the real estate agents are needy more than ever for the leads that we're delivering right now. So we have their full attention. Whereas when
and you're able to grow in the face of tough economic climate.
Yeah.
So this panel is titled "The Giants of the Region." I think, well, yesterday was a different day, but these are definitely three of the digital giants in the region. At the risk of setting false expectations, there's probably about $3 billion of enterprise value sitting right here. And the reason I make that statement is it's a range. Obviously, we have the bigger one sitting at the end of this row. But the question is, when I go out and talk about your businesses, because I'm passionate about your businesses and the ecosystem, a lot of people, even in the investment community, don't know the sheer size and scale that you guys have achieved, and they still think that it's an app.
it's good, don't tell them.
Yeah, you're in the clear now.
We're enjoying.
No, I think it's important because, again, when we have government leaders across the region, but particularly in our key markets, the only time they're going to talk about us, care about us, take us by the hand and pull us up is when they see that, wow, technology, is a huge driver of GDP and is a huge driver of knowledge jobs, white-collar jobs, right? People who live in the country, have children, buy real estate, pay VAT, put their kids in school, pay SALIC in the case of RTA, in the case of, in everyone's case. And this is huge. Can you, whatever you're comfortable sharing in this environment, can you just give the audience a sense of scale, whether it's, maybe you don't want to do revenues, but users, captains, some sort of KPI that you're comfortable sharing that gives a sense of reach, scale, impact?
Yeah, so the KPI that we care about most is the number of jobs we are creating. This is the true North Star that binds all of Careem behind the mission. And we actually recently crossed 1 million jobs last month. The target was to hit 1 million jobs end of 2018.
1 million jobs.
1 million jobs. 1 million jobs. And we're actually creating 60 to 70,000 new jobs every month. So it's really...
and these are captains, just to be specific. This is not just your direct payroll, which is...
Yeah, it's 3,000 to 4,000.
3,500. I think Ruth gave us a bit of color on that yesterday.
Yeah.
That's direct payroll, right? Sorry, I just want to make clear here because they may not understand our terminology.
Yeah. So 1 million jobs of captains working on the platform, making a living, educating their kids, feeding their families, educating themselves, and trying to improve their lives. So that's the one KPI that we care deeply, deeply about. In terms of others, the platform has quite a bit of breadth now. So we are in 120 cities, in 15 countries. There are close to 35 million users that have signed up to the platform and used us at some point or the other. And in terms of engagement, of how many people use the app and engage with us, we're probably the largest internet platform in the region by a big margin. So not just the largest ride-hailing platform, but the largest internet platform in the region
as determined by users,
transactions that happen
transactions,
on a daily basis.
float going through your pipe, and so on and so forth.
Which is the opportunity, right? The engagement is high, and we can try to convert that engagement to get into other things and start enabling other services through the platform.
Thank you for sharing in a public forum. Guys, what are you comfortable sharing?
Oh, yeah, it's fine. We have a lot of different metrics, different KPIs. For us, the most important KPI is the number of streams we generate per month. It's without that, we couldn't build what we're building today in terms of machine learning. And we crossed 1 billion stream a year ago. Right now, we're over 1.5 billion stream per month that flows into our
Per month?
Per month.
1.5 billion streams. And a stream is a song?
It's a song, yes, exactly. It's a song streamed by a user. So over every month, today, we're doing over 1.5 billion stream per month.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah, we have active on the platform per month. This month was 13.5 million active user. Totally, the people who
13.5 million active.
Yes. 75 million downloads. But that's not, I mean, the number that I care about more is the active, the one. And we have close to 2 million artists available. And over last month, over 50,000 tracks that were uploaded by Arab artists to our platform. Because we started allowing artists, a year ago, started allowing artists to upload direct content by passing labels. We also started creating content. We'll be creating much more content this year. But we started allowing artists, and that's actually generated good traction on artists because a lot of them are unsigned. There isn't a big label in the region which we're helping because after all, we want to make sure it's full cycle to keep growing the local content.
So before we move to Michael, our vision and the reason we get up every day in the morning is to make the region a better place through investing in technology, entrepreneurship, and innovation. And that's the reason I say that is because in the very, very early days when we started this in 2011, Amir and I, in a dingy little office where we were the T-boy and the secretary and we were everything, right? It was just us trying to figure this out. We interchanged. Depends on his mood. We were many times approached by the likes of people. I think there's someone in the room here that was one of those people that would show us, Uber Series B. And Spotify and the likes coming to us saying, "Hey, why don't you put some money into Topco or into a MENA JV, and then all you need to do is hire somebody on the ground to go out and basically sign up telco partnerships so that you get distribution and get on people's phone screens." That's one executive running around the region. And then you need somebody to go and sign up Rotana and the local music labels and just get the catalog on because the Western stuff is quite easy. And I think financially, it could have made a lot of sense. I mean, certainly in the case of Uber. But it obviously doesn't hit the remit. It's not what we're here to do from a vision perspective. So my question to you guys is, or maybe Elie.
Directly.
Yeah. So I'll be direct. So yesterday I just saw it. We've been crazy busy with these 2 days. Spotify Arabia launches, and it was like painful. But it's a fact of life, right? Competition is everywhere. How many staff do you have? How big is the organization? Headcount?
118 today.
180.
118, yes.
118.
118.
Okay.
Most of them are engineers. We're very much an engineering-focused company. We have our biggest office in Beirut, but we are also running in Cairo, Riyadh, and Dubai. Obviously, because we're engineers and focused, most of us are in Beirut. Spotify launched. Yeah, I mean, we've expected it. It's like we had 6 years head start. And Deezer launched also like a month ago. I mean, I was talking with Mudassir a bit ago. It's like they didn't get that much head start with Uber and Careem. We got a very good head start. So them coming, I mean, it's fine. I honestly think it's pretty good that they came because competition is healthy for us internally. I was also saying to Mudassir, internally, I had to look internally more to externally. My team was affected by like, how come, there's another competitor and everything. It's like, no, come on, hold on. We're just fine. The head start we have is amazing. The users we have are amazing. The community we've built is amazing. We have nothing to worry about. I can also say that last month with the huge launch of Deezer, we did our best revenue generating month by far, and that's what we're focused on, revenue, nothing else. The details don't matter. Spotify coming is good because there are a lot of projects that we're working on low fire. Now we're actually boosting fire on them, and we're working double speed, so it's good to somebody, puts you more on the straight line. Remember that competition is there. I think it's pretty fair to say that a lot of users saying now that Anghami copied that from Spotify and copied that from Spotify. I couldn't but hold as saying that several features that Spotify launched recently have been available on Anghami for over a year. Spotify, and that's something that Mudassir also mentioned. The point is, Spotify might not have copied us, but we've been working in emerging market and we've been trying to make it easy for emerging markets. And then eventually when they redesigned their app in April, they took several ideas that their designers might also have thought of that we're working on. The point is, at the end, I'm satisfied by having a product that is very, very competitive. And if, like Michael said, is like being compared to Spotify heads-on is fine. It's a good thing. It's not such a bad thing to being compared. As long as we are the leaders in the region, we will remain the leaders in the region. The rest doesn't make sense. I mean, it's fine by me. And we'll do better. And we'll have a lot of stories around what will happen. That's
so competition, the conclusion is competition drives growth. And clearly, in the short term, has driven growth.
I mean, and that's what we're looking up.
Sure. Michael, just maybe whatever you can share to give the audience a sense of scale.
Yeah.
Countries.
Maybe rather than sharing numbers, just to say that the people don't often realize that the countries where we enter, there is no real estate market, meaning that the people will buy or rent in their street, in their own neighborhood, because that's all they know. And when we come and we digitalize this information that has never come online, and we hold hands of people that have never really brokered deal, that there are, they get paid tips rather than commissions. And we tell them, no, you should be asking for a commission. You can ask up to 3% commission. And then they make it a job and they digitalize this information. It is actually creating a market and a transparency. And then you're suddenly having people from one side of the country buying on the other side of the country and creating an economy that was not there before.
So actually, maybe I can provide some color because we do studies on impact. And impact can be things like jobs, direct jobs created by these folks, at least in our portfolio. Jobs facilitated, in the case of Careem, the number of captains that they have in their platform, but also GDP facilitated. And the number for Property Finder is, in the UAE alone, $8 billion of real estate. And this is just buying and selling, right? There's an equal amount of activity going on the rental of real estate in the UAE. So, I mean, that's a significant impact. I know that I'm extremely proud of. So, changing up gears here, just talk about a little bit of innovation and technology. When we get some of the biggest investors in the world coming to meet and look at our portfolio companies from the early stages to even today, they spend a lot of time, obviously, working, getting to know the teams, but they spend a lot of time on product and sitting with the technologists. And without being specific, so anyone who wants to take this can take it, but in many cases, I can at least speak for Michael's case, these are guys who are investing in classifieds across the globe, come in and take a look under the bonnet and say, this is world class, we've not seen this anywhere else, whether it's the front end or the back end that the brokers would use, and all of the technologies that go into creating a great user experience for the broker and for the consumer. Is there anything you guys want to talk about that specifically, just to show what you guys do from a product standpoint that gives you the edge?
I mean, in my case, let me talk about Anghami. We've built Anghami entirely within our team. I mean, we've not white branded, subcontracted anything externally. So the entire product has been built internally. And there's a lot of things that have been iterated on in the product because, as an example, I was saying data is important because we built everything on data. There's plenty of algorithms. Anghami has a lot of segments. You know Anghami as a consumer, but we also have an Anghami for brands, for advertisers, so they can actually put in their ads and target customers and all of that. And there's Anghami for artists, and there's a lot of artists right now that are living on Anghami because they can generate revenue, which wasn't possible before. You can generate revenue elsewhere digitally at the time. So the point is, we've created that entire platform that is built on data that enables experimentation. Every day on Anghami, on the average, there's 150 experiments that are being run. So people in the same room might open Anghami and open their app, and we'll see different versions. Not something that I have that you don't have or the other don't have, because we run experiments. We have a saying, and Anghami says, in God we trust, and the rest we test. So we test everything. Anything that we want to do, we run tests on. We create audiences, we segment, and we generate results based on those segmentations. And we've done a lot of big giants have done reviews on Anghami, and we've done meetings with us. And the way when they thought that we built everything from all of those several-sided marketplace, whether the brand side, the ads, the artist, and the entire consumer product with the machine learning, with all the features that were coming up that we're showing to people, is like then they say we built all that in the Middle East, in Beirut, with a very small team relatively to all of the remaining giants. Says that, we have talent, we have people, we can build everything. It just needs focus.
I guess the danger is trying to give someone a Ferrari when what they really need is a Land Cruiser, and getting that balance right. Okay, if you have questions, please put your hands up. Hopefully there are people in the, there they are, with microphones. I'm going to ask, you can give the gentleman a microphone. So I'm going to ask the big, hairy one that we always get asked, and that is where the exit's going to come from. I think the comment we normally get told is that the public markets here aren't terribly mature or sophisticated, and we haven't got Facebook and Apple and Google and Microsoft and whoever else to gobble up all these tech companies. Not that necessarily a tech company would necessarily want to buy you guys. It'd probably be more of a I won't go on a tangent. Anyone have any response to that?
So I think if you are a promising startup or a good team of entrepreneurs, Careem is a buyer. So we're happy to give exits to people that want to exit, provided that you have some traction, you're working on the right things, and you have passion behind your ideas. We've bought a few startups already. We bought Round Menu earlier this year. We bought an Indian startup called Commute. Before that, we bought Anghami, a Moroccan startup. So we've actually made 5 or 6 acquisitions in the history of Careem, and we continue to be active in that space. And at this point, I think with scale, you can start looking at a global, listing at the right time. So the way that we look at Careem today is, the IPO is a natural milestone with our mission to build something lasting from the region. And the scale is already at a point where a global listing could make sense. However, it seems that there's a lot of education of retail investors that needs to be done. And there hasn't been a Middle East tech global IPO that has happened already. So the advice that's been given to us is, your sector hasn't had any exit, and your region definitely hasn't had any exit. Let the sector get a few exits, meaning if a Lyft or a Uber IPO happens sometime next year, then what you can do after that is educate people about Middle East tech, and that story is going to find resonance, and it's going to be exciting. Already the fact that Amazon acquired Souk is a huge validation to the opportunity in the region. So we will most likely see more and more exits happening in the region, and we'll try to gobble up as many small startups that we can.
And how do you let the entrepreneur startup community know what sectors you wanna acquire?
So we have broken our business into 3 high-level verticals. So there's, of course, the mobility of people, in which we are working on cars, 3-wheelers, 2-wheelers, bikes, bicycles. There's a whole range of options on the mobility of people. Then there is a mobility of things, broader umbrella of deliveries, where there is food, where there is groceries, there is other pharmacy and other things. And the last area of interest is payments, which is something that we're relatively new to. But there is a wallet in the app, which most of you have tried, and it's actually become...
You sent me 10 dirhams over lunch.
We did, right?
Thank you.
You should try that feature. The P2P feature is already live in the app. And
but maybe you want to explain that.
yes, of course. So today, if you, let's say, have dinner or lunch with Dany, and he ends up taking the tab, and you want to send some money to Dany, you can open the Careem app, add some credits to the app, and send a few credits to Dany so that he can take a ride on you on his way back to the office.
So right now it's closed circuit.
It's closed circuit. You can send money to each other, but the money can only be consumed on Careem platforms, which are ride-hailing and food delivery for now. And then over time, we are working with governments and regulators to see how we can get the licenses to open it up for any purchase, any use case. So those are 3 areas of interest: mobility of people, delivery, and payments. So if you are doing anything in these areas, we're interested in speaking to you.
So maybe I can take a quick segue. I know that, we're going to take a question, I promise, but I have to tell the story. Sorry, it's very rare that we have this many people in one room, especially with our friends from Bahrain and Saudi and the government and government-related entities to hear these stories, because we will also forget them. So quick 1 minute. Russia looked very much like the Arab world, certainly the GCC, in terms of, if you looked at their public markets, they were oil and gas, minerals, finance, banking. It's just, look at our exchanges. It's the same, right? It's whether it's Saudi or UAE. Obviously, no tech, but there was a wise man called Vladimir Putin, who, and again, I'm not a politician, so I'm not talking about his politics. I'm talking about what he did for the tech ecosystem, which was transformational. And what he did was he realized that it just doesn't make sense not to have a technology ecosystem when they have 250,000 engineers of the best engineers in the world, or amongst the best engineers in the world, graduating every year. So he wanted to find them jobs. And so he did 3 things. He called a meeting of ministers, and he told his ministers that they need to do something to favor startups. And they passed a law. It's legislation. This is, 4 or 5 years ago, that basically says if a government entity is procuring a like-for-like product, the startup gets priority, which I think is just genius. And that they're building on that. Then the second meeting was he went and met with his oligarch billionaire friends, put them around a table, as one does, and said, you have to invest in the technology ecosystem. I don't care if you're angels, you're investing in funds, whatever. Money. Without the money, there is no incentive structure, and without the incentive, no one gets up to solve for these problems. And then the third one was he went to the local stock exchange, and he said, what the hell is wrong with you guys? He didn't say it this way, but he said,
worse.
Probably worse. But, it's construction, oil and gas, finance. Seriously, all due respect, that was the last 50 years. Now we have to look into the future. And so they took a few companies public, but the first one, I believe, was Mail.ru, which has become a platform play, which is what you're trying to accomplish with Careem. And that company today, I don't know what the market cap, it was, last time I looked, it was about $10 billion. And it's done, I think, 10x since the IPO. So it IPO'd at $1 billion, and it's now worth $10 billion. And it is a massive acquirer in Russia, and it's spinning out lots of business models. And it did the Yandex business, which we spoke about earlier on, and it's been transformational. And there are many other public companies. It's the most valuable. And I know the Europeans are in the house, Fred and Harry, if I'm off, let me know, but I believe it's the most valuable tech company in Europe, if you count Russia as part of Europe. So, very few fixes, really, and this is why I asked you yesterday, what if you had a magic wand, what would that be that would be transformational to your businesses and to the technology ecosystem? And I didn't get the answer I wanted.
Tech talent.
Tech talent, yeah, but what's the fix to get that tech talent tomorrow on the books and on the payroll? Anyway, I just wanted to get that story in. We have a question from the young man here. Sorry.
So actually on that, so I'm co-founder.
Speak closer.
I'm co-founder of a startup, and one of the biggest bottlenecks, and we're in London, and it's faced the same problem in Silicon Valley, is the access to talent, and good talent at that, right? And so how do we come up with something actionable today that could let the Middle East grow? You guys have done amazing things, and could maybe one of the solutions be the same reason that I actually started my career in investment banking? You go to people in high school or in university in their first or second year, give them a chunk of money and say, look, this is more money than you've ever seen since you've been born. Come work for us for a summer. We'll train you up. You don't need to study software engineering to become a coder. and then give them a full-time job before they've even graduated. And household names like Careem, Property Finder, Anghami, like they would be delighted, wouldn't they? So isn't that something actionable that we can do today? You three club together with some VCs and provide some sort of, graduate schemes and internships. Is that maybe the solution?
So I think there's a short-term fix and there's a long-term fix, or medium to long-term fix. We discussed yesterday when we asked, I think I asked you, Mudassir, and Ronnie from Souk, Amazon. The answer was, both of you said engineers. But the fix was, we got to build schools. Now, David Rowan had spoken about that amazing company in Peru that just to solve the problem because the government wasn't building enough schools, or the education system seems to be broken there, just went out as entrepreneurs do and just fixed the problem by just building schools. But that's a 20-year-old fix. It's going to be, hopefully we'll be alive to see it. But
I think there is something there, right? I think money can make people make the...
So you have to lower the cost. That's the short-term fix.
Lower the cost or give them more money than they would get in other places, in other things. I think the thing that we need to watch out for are the mercenaries, right? Because when you put money, everyone's going to flock in. So you need to make sure that you have systems in place that sort of test for the mission alignment, region alignment, and make sure that you're not just getting the mercenaries who will be here for some time and then they'll be the first ones to leave as soon as something happens in the region.
So is it immigration?
Create opportunities. It's about creating opportunities. For instance, we're allowing interns to come to work on Anghami we had in this summer people that were age 14, 15, 17, and way more working in Anghami. We allowed them to create projects. We allowed them to explore what we could do with them. And they created projects. Some of them became live in our app. We realized that this is very important, so we've been doing that over time. We have interns coming in, and now we went out to universities, so we're creating a program with AUB for machine learning. We're open sourcing a billion data set from our app that is anonymized for them to be able to create machine learning models, and we're helping them in the courses, because we need scientists, we need engineers beyond the old models, the people who used to know something, but machine learning is very important. It's not magic dust, by the way, but it's very important. So we need them, and universities aren't creating engineers. Probably have to go to Europe to find people like that. So that's why we said, okay, let's go give them data, help them, send our engineers, teach them, and create opportunities. And then they will work with us or with others. Doesn't matter. Hopefully they will work with Careem. The point is create the opportunity. Otherwise, they will go.
So one of the fixes, from Vladimir Putin's story that I just told you, was he made tech cool. So parents didn't want their kids to go and work they didn't even know who Google was, let alone Mail.ru and Yandex. Suddenly, because the boss, it's the top of his agenda, it became cool. And I think that you have to start that flywheel. And I think someone said it yesterday on your panel. Imagine the people we look up to, Sheikh Mohammed and the likes across the region, say, guys, everyone go become a computer engineer, computer scientist. This is cool. I tell you, I think it'll make a big difference. I'm not saying Dubai is the only solution provider to this problem. Just earlier on the Sovereign Wealth panel, Yusuf was reading out, in English, something that MBS had said a few weeks ago at the FII. There we are. We're just reading what he said. So we take these words as gospel. I think the only way we can make this change is by lobbying people at the highest levels of government to think along these lines and make it cool to work in tech and to be an engineer, not I got to be a doctor or a banker. Sorry, I apologize.
No, it's we're going to have to eventually get together as in tech businesses and think about how can we create our own educational system at some point, because our biggest bottleneck is the engineers. And as entrepreneurs, when we don't get what we want, we tend to try to fix it ourselves. And it'll take 3 years to start bringing in the first grads until they come out and can code the first line of codes on our tech. So it's not impossible.
I think we've created a data science academy in Careem to take people that don't have the skill and make them data scientists. And we're in talks to start an AI lab as well. So this is the only way that you can start creating that skill. You get some people that know what they're doing, and they start coaching others.
It's about society also, because The idea of you having to go to university, study 4 or 5 years in university, then go work somewhere is something that we've been taught we have to do, right? We don't have an option. The point is actually going to have an apprenticeship at a startup, let's say like Careem, and learning, let's say data science or machine learning, apprenticeship is a way better model. And that's, the old model that has been tested, validated over hundreds of years. Nobody used to do a shoe unless you actually work at a shoe factory, a maker. So the whole idea is the system, our society is actually locking people 12 years at school, then 5 years at university, then you have to work, whereby I can actually bring that earlier and actually get even better if his mom will allow him to actually do that. Right?
So you guys have to have massive internship programs.
Exactly.
We take on about a dozen interns a year. I know that there are a handful of them here in the room right now that used to be interns with us, as well as there are some that are still interns with us. And hopefully they had no idea about the tech world, let alone the venture world. And I'm pretty confident to speak on your behalf and say that they've enjoyed being in this ecosystem. So we all have to do our part. And I think everyone who has kids that are probably in their early teens, go home and tell them to become engineers so we can solve this problem.
Women too, please.
Women too, absolutely. Did I say guys?
Not just guys. No.
Parents,
I'm
go home, get your kids to study to be engineers, computer engineers.
Hi, thank you. My name is Will Anderson. I have the privilege of heading up corporate affairs with Mudassir at Careem. So this question is probably not aimed at you, and I'll excuse you from that one. I want to ask a question about the challenges that come with building scale. And we've looked across the tech industry recently and seen some challenges for businesses like Facebook as they've wrestled with Cambridge Analytica. We've seen the resignations of CEOs of Instagram and WhatsApp because of potentially clashes of interest as they've acquired these businesses. And I suppose my question is for us as an ecosystem here is how do we protect ourselves against some of these challenges that come with building scale? You could also include the tech tax that we've seen come in the Valley and also in the UK. They've rolled out a tech tax, which are arguably some of the inevitabilities of as technology is no longer unique, it's just another industry that governments need to regulate and get their heads around. Is there something we can do in this region that can protect us from that, or is it something that's just inevitable?
You take that one.
Look, I think it's a problem that's so far away that, personally, I don't lose too much sleep over it. I think we have such bigger issues to solve structurally and fundamentally that when we have that kind of problem, or I can see it on the horizon, and we have a Facebook in the midst, I'm going to use your question to maybe paint a little bit of a picture. Can you all just imagine, we live in this region, whatever country it is, let's just take Dubai since we're living here, from here, and operate here. Can you imagine if there was a Google with 30,000 Googlers running around a Googleplex, somewhere, I don't know where, in Jabal Ali Free Zone or wherever they would want to be based. Can you imagine what the city and the region and the country would look like if you had this intelligence running around, doing what they do? I'm just giving Google as an example. It could be a Careem, and I think that is the vision as it's transformed, as I'm sure you know, of the founders. Can you imagine if it was a publicly traded entity on, doesn't matter which exchange, local, dual listing, LSE, that's the technicality, that then also afforded them a currency with which to expedite M&A, right? Cisco did that elegantly over 25 years, not just by buying with the cash you have on the books because you're a highly profitable business. Can you imagine what the region would look like? It would be absolutely transformational, and I think these are the things we dream of. When we get there, we'll worry about GDPR and the tech tax and all these things. We're so far away.
I think
it's inevitable.
Will is seeing the journey at Careem, right? I think to get there, Dany, I think there are a lot of scale challenges that need to be overcome. And I'm sure you have stories, and it's not straightforward. This is not something that anyone teaches you or anyone writes about. And since we haven't had large successes in the region doesn't have the capability to help us get there as well. So a lot of this is trial and error, right? And I'll give you one or two examples of, and the scaling is about org scaling, right? Culture scaling, this is the issue. So about 2.5 years ago, and as some of you know, we actually are obsessed, or we were obsessed with growth. Like every 15 minutes, there's a Slack channel at Careem that shows how much have we grown same time last week, today, in every city. So I can tell you Dubai has grown 5% from the same time last week. And the entire company has this 15-minute heartbeat. Everyone looks at that Slack channel. If Dubai is falling behind, if Beirut is falling behind, someone is getting a phone call somewhere trying to figure out how the hell is this happening? How can we get back on the growth treadmill? And we became so obsessed with it that that's the only thing that we were doing. And then almost 2.5 years ago, one of our leaders basically said, we have completely lost it. You guys recruited us, telling us that the mission of Careem is to simplify the lives of people and build an awesome organization that inspires. What kind of rubbish are we building? Right? We are building a growth factory. We're not building an institution. We're not living our mission. We're not in touch with the customers that are taking these trips. We're just becoming numbers oriented. And to be honest, that was actually I was ashamed to look at myself in the mirror. What kind of organization have we built? We went away so far from our mission that the organization was not something that I was proud of, or that one of us was proud of. And it was a long journey to fix it, but there are at least 3 such instances that have happened in the history of Careem, where we have built, and building is all about growing, right? You get a lot of people on board, you don't have the time to onboard them, they come on board, they come from different places, they do things their own way, and then you have 20 different ways of doing things in an organization, right? So I'm sure all of you have run into these challenges, and more of you will run into these challenges. And the challenge in the region is we don't have expertise on this topic. We don't have the Bill Campbells of the world that we can go to and say, Bill, how do we solve this issue, right? We don't have the Eric Schmidts of the world to say, how should I think of this problem, right? And I think that is a real challenge that we need to solve. And I think there will be failures, unnecessary failures, if we don't help our companies tackle these things at the right time. So what I'm telling you is something that happened 2.5 years ago, right?
Sure.
And we have survived these things and we've come out stronger. But I'm sure there are startups today that are running into these challenges. We need to figure out how do we build a mentorship network, how do we build a coaching network for entrepreneurs to help them overcome these things and help them scale. It's a real challenge.
I think one problem is that Mudassir is talking about right now is that we don't talk about failures. We don't talk about success, about growth, about what we did. I mean, how, those KPIs, the big metrics. What led to them? I mean, how did you end up, getting there? There's a lot of failures and a lot of valleys. And this is whereby we should shine and get a bit of time on it, because there's a lot of companies that folded down in the Middle East. I have never read an article about them, and not even an article about the founder telling why we failed, right? Because there's a lot of things that we don't get taught. Like I'm an engineer, I want to build a great product, but I forget there are people building the product, and sometimes I have to spend time on the people more than on the product, right? And that's something you don't learn unless you fail and have a problem with an engineer or wherever.
And if you guys haven't read the book, this was the book that was mentioned yesterday, right? The Hard Things About Hard Things.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a Bible on this topic.
The Hard Thing About Hard Things.
From Ben Horowitz. It's a great book to read, and you realize that you're not the only one going through it. Google went through it, Amazon went through it.
Everybody.
All these companies have gone through it, and it's a tough journey, but it's a journey that's exciting and can be done.
On that note, we've overstayed our welcome by a long shot. I want to thank the 3 of you, particularly you 2 who have given us time today and yesterday. And thank you, Elie, for flying in from Beirut. This has been awesome. Round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you, Dany.